Welcome to the Train of Thought podcast. My name is Logan DeCamp, and I am a personal trainer and nutrition coach.
And I'm Chloe DeCamp, and I'm a certified athletic trainer.
And in this recording, we're going to be talking about flexibility versus mobility and why the difference matters for injury prevention and sports performance. Now, real quick before we get started, what you just heard is I do have a stutter, so if you hear me take a longer pause than normal or I stumble on a word, please bear with me. I'm still learning how to talk. So should we dive in?
Yeah.
Awesome.
You first.
Okay. So I want to set the frame here that just because you are flexible does not mean you are mobile. A lot of people get the confusion there. Just because you're flexible does not mean you are mobile. And what I mean more specifically, if you're flexible, you can get into that range of motion. So let's take a squat, for example. If you are flexible, you might be able to squat below 90 degrees. But if you are mobile, we can put weight on your back and then you can get below 90 degrees in that squat and you have the range of motion, the strength, the stability, and the control in that range of motion. The difference between the two is if you're flexible and you do that squat, then again, you can get in that range of motion. But let's say in this context, you're not mobile and you squat below 90 and there's weight on your back. Now your knees start caving in, your feet pronate, you have an arch in your back. That means you are not mobile. You are not strong, stable, and have control in that range of motion. And this is critical for you to know and understand, because if you're trying to build muscle, you're trying to increase your performance in the gym, whatever it might be, if you do not understand the difference between flexibility and mobility, your risk of getting hurt increases tenfold.
Ooh, spooky.
I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I think you put it in a nice way with kind of like understanding that, because honestly, before we talked about this, I have a pretty basic understanding, of course, like there's certain things that all contribute with this topic, but you see it so much more tangibly than I do with, the difference between the flexibility and mobility, and you really coach people through how to like attain that mobility. And that's so important with especially injury prevention, because if you can reach that range of motion without any weight and, you're pretty flexible, whatever, that's great, but that doesn't always translate to the actual movement that's more of a functional movement, right? Like a squat. And so,
yeah,
super important there.
Yeah. And to like give another example so really people can visualize this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you press something overhead and your bicep can basically touch your ear while keeping a neutral spine. So that means your back stays flat, which for most people that's hard to do because they're super tight in their shoulders and they don't have good shoulder flexibility. But let's say that you have good shoulder flexibility and you can press your hand above your head and get your bicep to your ear. But as soon as we put weight in your hand, you have lack of control in your core. So your spine wants to arch, your arm starts shaking, and it feels very, very loose and not controlled. You do not have mobility. So that is what we're talking about here. And we're going to be talking about, why that not only is key for, why that's not only key for injury prevention, but why that's also important for being able to increase your performance as well too.
Yeah. A point that I wanted to say is like mobility can improve like the contraction of like the muscle fibers with like activating the nerves that activate the muscles, right? By, having that stabilization factor, but then you're also lengthening the muscles and the surrounding connective tissue, and that's where flexibility can play into mobility, if that makes sense. So like flexibility is great as like a starting point, right? Of course, like we can do a lot of like static stretching all the time, and that will improve your flexibility, and there's obviously more to that, but the biggest key is creating stability so that you can do those movements, and that translates into mobility.
So you
Right.
being more stable increases odds of you being more mobile.
Well, combined with
The
flexibility.
Okay. Okay.
There's, like you said, there's a ton of different things that play into mobility. It's not just the, oh, you're flexible, then you can do that movement. Not necessarily. You
Right.
have to have everything else playing a part, and it's a full body movement. Like you said, like having core engaged plays a lot into an overhead shoulder press. Like, you have to have stability in other areas, not just in the target area, in order to go through that movement and be mobile.
That's a really, really good point. Because one thing that comes to mind for me personally is I've been working on getting more hip extension when I'm running. But a really important part of that is keeping your core engaged. Because if your core is not engaged when you're putting your hip in extension, so for those that are listening in or watching, you putting your hip in extension is basically you being able to kick your leg back behind your butt.
Yeah.
And it's being able to contract your butt. And it's really important process of being able to run efficiently. And something that I've been working on is I used to run with an arch. I don't know why. It's just my body mechanics. That first couple weeks, I don't know how to engage my core. So I think it's great that you're pointing a light into, hey, you might be flexible in your hips, but your ankles and feet might not be flexible at all. So whenever you squat, your knees don't go over your toes because you're lacking that. So it's not necessarily one specific area. Like, we have to look at the whole body and what is every joint and muscle kind of doing in this specific movement to help ensure you're moving not only safely but also more optimally as well too.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
So to kind of expand on this further, and I think by now you should know like why this is important and why you should care, because it's a very important process of you being able to be in the gym for longer and safer. Because I mean, the old saying goes, unfortunately, is you fall and break a hip and you die of pneumonia, right? And you being able to be more flexible and mobile, it decreases your odds of getting hurt as you age. Now, one other thing, so there's been a lot of confusion that I've seen in our coaching program about, when do I increase the weights in the gym? Like, what does that look like? And being flexible and mobile is one of the first signs we actually look for in our coaching program for determining if we go up in weight or not. Because let's say, for instance, you go into the gym and you do barbell back squats, and you're doing 10 reps with like 135 pounds. It feels really, really good. But you maybe don't notice that whenever you're doing those barbell back squats, your feet are your feet are pronating in. You're not being able to contract your butt as much. Your core's not engaged. So not knowing this, you increase to 165 and you do 10 reps there, and it might feel good, but the problem is we never fix the movement breakdown in the lift. And not only are you decreasing your ability to get stronger in that movement by being able to be more mobile, but you're also greatly increasing your risk of getting hurt. So this topic alone, I think it's something that it's going to require you to work with like a movement specialist or like a coach, or maybe send a video. Like, if you want, you can send a video of you in the gym, and then we can break it down for you as well too. Cause I love being able to teach people how to move better pain free. But you being able to have a solid knowledge and understanding of flexibility versus mobility is going to be a really, really important process of being able to determine if you should go up in weight or not in the gym.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, you think about it tangibly. Yeah, like if I can't work through my squat, which has been such a thing for me, definitely. I kind of stay stagnant where I am with squats because I get worried that, like, well, that didn't feel good on my back, so I'm not going to go up because there's clearly some functional deficits there. I'm not mobile in my hips. There's one hip that's always a kind of a nuisance, and then my ankles are awful. So I know that there's things that I need to fix before I consider maybe moving up in that weight. And so you make a really good point there for sure. And even me personally, that's actually really good advice. And so I kind of want to touch a little bit back on, like, we talked a little bit more about what mobility looks like, but what exactly is flexibility? Right. And so
Yeah.
I think just a quick, like, clarification of that, because obviously I think mobility is more important than just being flexible, but like we said, they kind of play a little bit hand in hand and into each other. And so, like, being flexible, of course, we like to do a lot of static stretching, right? That's, if anybody thinks of flexibility, they probably, I mean, my first thought is the sit and reach test.
And that's what a static stretch is.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
sit and reach and you hold that position for
Right.
30 to 60 seconds,
Right.
or if not longer.
Exactly. So, like, for your hamstrings, you're sitting and reaching and reach for your toes and you're holding, or you're, I don't know, without doing them, because I would
Couch stretch, pigeon stretch,
anything, like,
yeah,
you're
stuff like that.
stretching your biceps, or you're stretching, any kind of, like, stretch that you quote, like, oh, that's a stretch. Most often is going to be a static stretch. People do it for usually less than 15 seconds. And you do it often right before your workout, or you do it, I don't know, anybody who's really good at just doing it after their workout, right?
Yeah.
That's for the general population, not necessarily for you, because you're super good at your mobility and your stretches and all that. And a lot of your probably clients, because you've taught them the importance of it. But most people will go into the gym and do a quick, all right, sit and reach, a little this, a little that. All right, I'm ready to go, right?
And this and little that is you just reaching your arm across and just kind of pulling your arm.
Yeah.
And just, oh yeah, that's a good
Whatever.
stretch.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm just going to move my hip around, get my neck.
Yeah.
Oh, the biggest thing is, I got to go run on the treadmill for 10 minutes. I got to sweat. I got to get my heart rate up, because that's going to make me work out better, which is value in that.
There's a little bit of that, right? But then you don't even do any stretching after you go run on the treadmill or walk on the treadmill.
So my biggest thing with this is, how is you moving on a treadmill getting your hip, and so you running on the treadmill, how is that going to help prime your shoulders to move better for that workout, right? It doesn't. Yeah. You're just moving in one plane of motion. Right. You just doing a static stretch and kind of just moving your joint here and just lollygagging around. How is that going to actively prime your hip to go into flexion and then also be able to come up and contract your glute? Like
totally.
Right. So sorry, continue.
No, you're good. That's the point that I was trying to say there, is like, these movements that we almost always do, if we're not, I mean, I'm guilty of it from when I first started working out and figuring out what that routine looks like. I would see other people doing it, and I'm like, all right, well, that seems like the norm. And I used to play volleyball. That's what we would do as our warm up. We would jog around the gym and then do a couple stretches, and you're right into it. And so I don't think a lot of people are taught, okay, that's fine, but it's not, you can be better, because you're not helping yourself prevent injury by doing that. You're not helping prime your joints in your body for the most optimal movements, and being able to actually increase strength, because those types of stretching, that's not doing anything for your strength or your injury prevention, like I just said. Yeah. So it's like,
yeah, the one thing that I really hit home for me, and I'm trying to think back to when I started my fitness journey. For some reason, for me, it just clicked in regards
you're just perfect.
Well, no, I'm definitely far from that. But I don't know. I don't remember just going straight into the workout when I first started getting into it. Like, I thought about, okay, I need to get my muscles more warmed up. But one thing that really, really hit home for me that I've heard in the past couple years, it's from Mind Pump, is how are you priming your body to move efficiently as possible for that workout?
Mm-hmm.
That should be your thought process going into the gym. Okay, I have 10 minutes. How can I prime my muscles and my joints to move as efficiently as possible throughout this workout? And the more you do that, guess what happens? You increase your range of motion in that lift, and now your ability to get stronger and build muscle goes up as well too.
Absolutely. I mean, I can even attest to that today. Like, I did back and shoulders and biceps or something. I don't know. All I know is I had to do assisted pull-ups, and I am horrible at pull-ups. I hate them. They just never feel right. They just, I don't know. I just hate them. But I really want to get better at them. And so oftentimes I do kind of go through the motions with my warm-ups. I kind of lollygag a little bit. I'll do a little this, little that, right? There are definitely some dynamic movements that I've incorporated that you've shown me, which have been actually really helpful. And I know when I do those, like today I did a lot of those dynamic movements, the pull-ups felt better. My shoulders didn't pop in, whatever, feeling tight. It was a more of a dynamic movement that felt good. Like I was contracting where I needed to contract too. So even today, like that goes to show, like the better you prime your muscles in your body for the movements that you're going to do, the better it's going to feel. And you're going to be like, well, that was a good lift. Like I feel actually really good. Not, oh, that kind of hurt. That didn't feel great. There's going to be a little bit of that. Of course, we understand.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest difference here is flexibility. I mean, in my definition, it's how can you get into that range of motion? Mm-hmm. What would be your definition of flexibility then?
Yeah, I would say kind of the same thing of like, I equate flexibility into stretching a little bit. Okay. Of like static stretching specifically. Okay. Into you're reaching towards a certain range of motion, right? And trying to get into your full range. And then you're holding that movement for, usually people do less than 15 seconds, which is not doing a single thing for you. You have to do at least a minimum of 30 seconds for any stretch. Otherwise, you're not doing anything. Yeah. It comes back to like the imposed demands on, SAD principle almost, where it's like if you're not providing enough time for those muscles to lengthen and like the tissue to literally just relax into that range of motion, you're actually not doing anything. So that's another point that I wanted to make on this, is that if you want to work on flexibility alone and you're doing the static stretches and you're only holding things for like 15 seconds at most, you need to be holding a lot longer. I mean, grab a timer and do it like for 30 seconds or more. Yeah. Because otherwise that stress strain relationship of the tissues in your body will not be able to lengthen and actually create flexibility in that joint, in those muscles and everything. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense.
I don't know if I answered what you were trying to say, but
there's a couple things I want to add there. Okay, first thing is we are saying though, if you're doing a static stretch, don't do that before a workout. We actually want to do more mobility work, which if you don't know what that looks like, message us, send us a email, and I can send you videos from our workout library and show you things.
And we can talk more about that a little bit later too.
But I think I have mixed opinions on. I definitely see the value, and I do agree that from a flexibility standpoint, it is important to hold that static stretch for 30 to 60 seconds, sometimes longer, not like 90 seconds at most, to actually get that efficient. I guess my mixed opinions is also if somebody is not stretching at all, I'm a big believer in let's just stack wins and build that momentum. So you doing just 2 minutes of stretching and regardless if you hold it for 10 to 30 seconds, you being able to at least do that, check the box and build that win is going to allow you to build confidence that you can do that. And if you do that on a long enough time period, then you're going to be more confident in your ability to hold that range of motion for longer. Because a lot of people that I've seen, especially being able to work with people,
Sure.
is we do like a pigeon stretch and they feel like their whole leg's going to fall off. They're like, my glute is screaming. And like, there's some people that just can't hold that right for that long. And, you know, that comes down to you being able to have a coach to walk you through that, and timing is important, things like that. But you just being able to kind of get in a routine and you being able to do this on a long enough time period is going to help you have confidence that you can do something like this.
Yeah, I would say I slightly disagree because I would rather you hold a stretch for minimum 30 at a lesser range of motion that you can tolerate and then progress from there.
Yeah, I guess where I'm coming from more specifically is a
Like,
lot of people.
I understand what you're saying.
A lot of people will be like all or nothing thinking.
Of course.
If I can't hold that for 30 seconds, I might as well not do it. Right. That's kind of where I come from, because like I've seen that a lot. People have all or nothing thinking, so like that's kind of where. But
that's where I would meet them in the middle. I would say, because genuinely, I understand this establishing the habit. If that's as much as you can do, great. We'll take a habit. We'll take it. We'll do that. But my point is, they're not actually doing anything beneficial for their body as much as you think you are. I get it. I know. We could go back and forth on this.
Yeah.
But holding at least a stretch for a certain amount of time, genuinely 30 seconds isn't that long. Anybody can probably do that.
Yeah.
Honestly. But the point is that you shouldn't be in that end range when it's through first time stretching that muscle. Right. Does that make sense? Meet them where they are already and only push them to slightly a little bit more than where they're at. Not, okay, this is what the stretch is. A pigeon stretch is a very intense stretch. And so working them towards, okay, let's start this on a box and you can hold that for 30 seconds. Awesome. That is a win to me because, one, you're actually creating a change, and then they're going to be able to actually ease into a harder, fuller range of motion. Maybe not as hard because they'll be feeling better by giving the muscles the actual time to get into that range of motion. Does that make sense? Because if you're not giving that time for the muscle to relax into the range of motion, you're not doing anything. You might as well not do it. Yeah. In my opinion.
Interesting.
So we could go back and forth on this, but my point is,
that just sounds to me like all.
But it's not it's not.
Yeah.
Because I understand that end point, but I would rather meet you where you are and not push you into an aggressive range of motion, because that's honestly a good way of getting you hurt. Aggressive stretching is a serious thing that people will go so hard into stretching and then they're hurt from that because they pushed past where their range of motion can let them do it.
Yeah.
So we could go on forever on this, but I'm saying I feel like, once again, I'm not crazy for thinking that 30 seconds isn't that long. It's half a minute. We can do a lot of things with just 30 seconds. I would say go back off from your range. See where you feel like, okay, that's a nice stretch. I don't feel like my leg is going to fall off. I don't want you feeling like your leg is going to fall off.
Right. Yeah.
That is going to be a problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree.
Because then they'll never want to do that stretch ever again.
It's just people that are new in the weight training, I think they have a different tolerance to pain. Like, or not a tolerance, but a different relationship to pain. So definitely want to meet them where they're at and not push as hard.
But that's where I say these are where the recommendations should be. Like, we shouldn't push them. I understand if you can do 15, then do 15. But my point is do 30 at a lesser range, and you'll make a difference just by doing that. And then you'll slowly notice, I can go a little further. I can go a little bit further, because you're allowing the muscles and the connective tissue to relax into that range by giving it time. Mm-hmm. So, it's a time under tension rule. It all comes back to a biomechanics and like in anatomy and physiology thing.
Yeah.
That's where I come from on it.
So if you only have 5 minutes, then it's going to be more important than to identify some more specific areas you would like that you would like to stretch.
Definitely.
So that way you can at least maximize your ability to lengthen that tissue as well too.
Yes. But to our first point, that may not even be our most important thing. Is we would honestly rather you do some mobility, right? Is that what we're saying?
I think it depends on the person. I think there's a lot of individuality here in regards to, for example, if somebody just got like they had surgery and they're coming out of surgery.
Totally.
Probably better if we don't. I mean, it's a good.
I think that's a different case for sure, and I can talk to that, of course, but
right. I think it's a combination of the two.
Yeah.
If you're going to be stretching, I'd rather you stretch and do mobility work at the same time. So what does that look like more specifically? Well, maybe you spend 2 minutes doing a static stretching, doing specific areas, and then you do 3 minutes of like being able to move your muscles and joints through ranges of motion. Or if you have 20 minutes, then maybe we're doing 10 minutes of a static stretch, and then we're going to end with mobility work. And I typically like to start with static stretching first if I'm doing just like a movement, for example, like a movement workshop.
Yeah.
If I'm doing like a workout, I'm never going to start
different.
with a static stretch. But if I'm doing movements more specifically, I want to get the tissue warmed up, kind of moving through full range of motion. And then now once that tissue is, and when I say tissue, the muscle, now once that muscle is warmed up, now let's move it through full range of motion and let's build that strength and control. Again, that's only if you're doing like movement specific. If you're doing like a workout, you'd be better off focusing on getting the joints and the muscles firing first.
With some mobility drills beforehand. How do you feel about like doing static stretching after?
Oh, I definitely think it's something a lot of people skip. And I think static stretching right after a lift, it allows from a internal standpoint, I think it allows your body to kind of get more in that parasympathetic state.
Totally.
So kind of in that rest and digest, because right after, so if you don't know, working out is a stressor on your body. It puts you in that fight or flight state, and you being able to do a static stretch, which there's a lot of studies that show if you do a static stretch at night before bed, it can actually help improve your sleep quality because it gets you in that parasympathetic rest and digest state.
Totally.
And the faster we can get you in that rest and digest state, the better odds you have at being able to recover from that workout as well too. And not only that, you being able to absorb the nutrients from your food all depends on you being in that rest and digest state. If you're in that fight or flight state, it's hard for your body to absorb the nutrients in your food. So the faster we can get you in that parasympathetic state, the faster we're going to be able to help you be able to recover from that workout.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And I would agree with that. Starting out a workout with more of a mobility routine and more dynamic movements involving stability, the flexibility, prepping those joints and muscles for what you're about to do to them. And then ending it off on something that can kind of bring it back down to a normal state there for sure.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
From a internal standpoint, I don't know the science off the top of my head of like what it's doing to the muscle specifically if you stretch after a workout. Like is there any physiological response that you know?
Well, I guess it just comes back to the same point. I mean, I was kind of saying of like how it just lengthens out those muscles because oftentimes we just put them into such a state of stress, right?
Yeah. But just to argue on that, wouldn't working out lengthen the tissue though? If like you do.
Well, that's where I'm not totally sure. That's what I was about to say because you're contracting and then lengthening and contracting. That's the whole point of majority of the movements we do in the gym, correct?
Right.
We're creating contractions in the muscles. And so But I think it more so, to your point, that kind of stretching for after the gym, I think brings it back to the point of like kind of getting into the parasympathetic.
Mm.
I think that's where the biggest benefit would say. I would have to look more into it because it's kind of harder to, pinpoint. But I would say, I mean, based on what I've learned, just, from my schooling and things like that, it's hard to say whether like passive stretching and flexibility is like a good determinant of injury prevention itself. There's just too many factors to really say on that. And so it's hard to know. I don't really know on
It's
that.
okay.
I wish I could
It's okay.
speak to that for sure.
We don't know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But
there was something I wanted to mention on that,
but the biggest thing though, regardless, because again, we don't know if from a internal standpoint, if you stretching right after a workout is going to impact your ability to hold on, let me finish this thought. If it's going to impact your ability to change the way the muscle kind of recovers, but what it will impact is your ability to get in that rest and digest state, and it's going to allow you to be able to recover much faster from that workout as well too.
And so by then probably giving you a better chance of a recovery from that workout. But I know we talked a lot about like DOMs a couple episodes ago. But like I think we discussed a little bit about how stretching plays into that, where it may have just a temporary influence on like how sore you feel. Just like the sensation of feeling sore, and may let you feel like you can train a little bit better maybe the next day or something because you feel less sore, not necessarily saying that the damage is fixed because you stretched. Does that make sense? So there's kind of a toss up on whether or not stretching is going to reduce your risk of like developing the delayed onset muscle soreness. It could be a component of that, but oftentimes people, if I stretch after my workout, I may feel less sore because I had, time to get those muscles to calm down. I'm going to be nice to you now. Time to chill. But that drives back to the point of the probably parasympathetic response for that.
Yeah, and I think as well too, I think DOMS, going back to that episode, a lot of your ability to not be sore after that workout comes down to your body to adapt to that demand of over time.
Right.
I mean, that's the goal. The goal is to adapt to that intensity and then add different variables to increase the intensity over time to get stronger, build muscle, and things in those nature.
And that can go towards flexibility too.
Yeah.
Right? If we're imposing a certain demand on that muscle to lengthen in 30 seconds, and then I slowly increase how far I'm pushing it over time, then we're going to get an adaptation. That's kind of my point that I was saying earlier.
There's a contract and relax method that works too from a flexibility. So basically, for example, if you go into like a pigeon stretch, is where like you put your leg forward and your back leg back. If you don't know what a pigeon is, look it up. But I'm essentially...
Well, not a pigeon stretch.
Pigeon stretch.
That'll take you down another deep rabbit hole.
But if you're in that pigeon stretch and you squeeze your butt for about like 5 seconds, and then you relax your body and you kind of relax for about 10 to 20 seconds and you go through that for like several rounds, you're going to be able to push into that range of motion and find you're getting further.
Yeah.
And you can do that with all other muscles as well too. There's tons of value in doing a contract and relax, which I would argue, well, I guess if you're doing a contraction relax, you would have to do it for about 30 seconds. Yes. But I mean,
at least relax for 30.
Yeah.
The contract, not necessarily, from my understanding.
Well, I'm talking about...
There's a lot of different variations of that type of stretch. You can do a contract relax with your concentric muscle. You can do a contract relax with your eccentric muscle. It gets really complicated, but the version that you're saying is contract for, 10, 15 seconds, and then you'll relax for about 30 seconds. And that's where you're getting the stretch. The contract isn't as much of the important part. It's more of being able to get the muscle to kind of calm down, and then you can go further into that.
So
that's kind of a tangent, I would say. It's that one's kind of complex to kind of explain.
So you relax for 30 though, and contract for 10?
Because you're stretching. That's the whole point.
Interesting. I've always contracted for 5 and then just have clients normally rest for about 10 to 15 seconds. We do that for several rounds.
I mean, I guess you could do it whatever way you want, but I'm saying
I
relax into a range of motion, thus talking about a stretch. 30 seconds.
You love that 30 seconds.
I do. It's been instilled in me. It was taught to me, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. She's going to be a 30-second drill sergeant here, guys.
Oh, gosh. I don't want to. Let's not.
I'm kidding.
There's another point I wanted to make. I don't know if you're ready to kind of transition to that. Because I did want to talk a little bit about just how it is so important for people who are injured or have had surgery on something is to regain range of motion. And that's through a lot of stretching, a little bit of dynamic movement, but that can be a little bit difficult. And so if you've had injuries, if you've had surgery, talking with a physical therapist, your doctor, surgeon, things like that, everybody's going to tell you that it's so important to regain your range of motion because there's a little window of opportunity where scar tissue mobility can be influenced and changed after those injuries and surgery, depending on what your surgeries are. And it can be complex, right? But I'm thinking, to speak towards a surgery like ACL surgery, right? ACL reconstruction, like it is so important to regain that range of motion that oftentimes you're going into physical therapy within a couple days after surgery to help. All right, we're going to turn the muscles on. We're going to start working on motion because it's so important. If you lose it, that's going to be really hard to regain later. And so I just want to speak to range of motion and maintaining if you have it or regaining if you've lost it is super important. That's why honestly we're talking about this today.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to that principle we talked about where you either use it or lose it, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not using it, the body has this amazing ability to preserve that energy and use it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about that. What was that?
Excuse me. It was last time.
No, it was the one before that. In that episode, we talked about moving with the purpose and how important that is for you to be able to expose yourself. So like that kind of transition into my next point here. Like if you want to start being more flexible and mobile, one thing I encourage all our clients inside of our program do is how can you move with the purpose today? How can you expose your muscles and joints to different positions and stretches repeatedly throughout the day and the week to increase your flexibility and mobility? So like on your board or somewhere, how can you move with the purpose today?
Totally.
Yeah. I feel like that's a pretty good place to end. I feel like we covered everything that we needed to talk about here today.
And remember, like, I don't want to sound like a drill sergeant with that. I did want to mention, we meet yourself where you are as well. And give yourself some grace with some of this because, like flexibility and doing stretching and mobility exercises are hard. And a lot of the time we don't want to do them, but they can be made easy if you meet yourself where you are. They shouldn't be painful. They shouldn't be like such a drag because they don't feel good. It should honestly make you feel better.
Yeah.
So just something to think about.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they look at it as a huge time commitment.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And my argument to that, and we didn't even talk about this, and I'll just end it here, is I've noticed, and there's been studies recently have talked about exercise snacks, which is short 5-minute movement throughout the day, and how that can and it all depends on the type you do, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've had clients where they just get up and they move and they stretch every 5 minutes, every 60 to 90 minutes, and they notice that they don't feel tired, they get more done, they feel better, and they just ultimately feel and perform better throughout the day. So
Yeah.
if you can give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to just get down on the floor, stretch, move your body, heck, I mean, just get up and dance and something. If you can just move and move with a
Yeah.
purpose, you're going to greatly increase the way you feel and perform as well too.
Definitely. And if you have more questions regarding like the mobility side of things, because we can talk about we could try and explain a mobility movement, but it's kind of difficult when we're sitting here just talking about it. Logan has tons of
Yeah, I think I
expertise in
I don't know.
that.
I have so many videos in our workout library that I was going to
He
say a
loves
number.
mobility. He's crazy.
I do like mobility work. So if you need more of a clarity on what it looks like, please feel free to message me at Logan D Camp on Facebook, or you can send me a email at logan@champ-camp.com. And if you have a question, we would love to hear from you so we can talk about your question on the show. So message me there, but enjoy the rest of your day and we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Peace.